So just recently, Cal Raleigh called out John Stanton, owner of the Seattle Mariners, following the loss of the Seattle Mariners and missing the playoffs, on his incompetence, inactivity of that offseason, especially last season. And it looks like it finally caught up to him. It was catching up to him for a while. Things that happened in August just delayed the inevitable. Now, before we get into this video, which I am very passionate about, hit that subscribe button. You will not want to miss more updates coming up on stuff like this. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Now, this is what Cal Raleigh said. According to Ryan Divish of Seattle Times, he said, in quote, "We've got to commit to winning. We have to commit to going and getting those players you see other teams going out and getting. Big-time pitchers, getting big-time hitters. We have to do that to keep up." And then he says it even more. "We've done a great job growing some players here and within the farm system, but sometimes you have to go out, you have to buy. That's the name of the game. We'll see what happens this offseason. Hopefully we can add some players and become a better team." And he is right. And just by this, Cal Raleigh is now my favorite player on the Mariners because I want someone to call out this ownership. I wanted any of these players to do that. And the last time anyone did something like this, it was Jeff Nelson in 2003, where it was right after the 2003 trade deadline where we did see the Yankees traded for Aaron Boone to improve on their third base. And because of that, the Mariners got offended and traded him away, which was led by Howard Lincoln. And Jeff Nelson called them out for their lack of activity. Then it was 2002 when Lou Piniella was coming off of a frustrating 2002 season where the Mariners really laid an egg in that 2002 trade deadline, watching the Oakland A's trade for Ricardo Rincon. And the only reason why you probably know that is because of the movie Moneyball, and also watching others making those kind of trades. Now, it reminds me of something, because I remember back in 2002, Howard Lincoln said this: "Our goal is to not win a World Series. Our goal is to field a competitive team year after year to put itself in position to win the World Series and hope at some point that does happen." The fact that I even memorized it shows how bad this Mariners management has been. And this is the stuff I'm most passionate about. And I remember I said it in the offseason throughout time that the Mariners did not do enough. Getting Teoscar was not enough. And if anything, at this point, trading for Teoscar made it worse because it came at the cost of our bullpen. Because Eric Swanson was one of our best bullpen pitchers. And then he was gone. And then that thinned out our bullpen depth. And it got to the point where now Paul Sewald is gone. And now Mariners don't really have a closer. Like, is Andres Munoz going to be our closer, or is Matt Brash? I wouldn't count on it today, because at least Andres Munoz, he blew quite a bit of saves and had some meltdowns after that trade deadline where they traded away Paul Sewald. I mean, I'm very concerned about this team because now we have a free agent coming up with Shohei Ohtani, and I'm convinced that John Stanton probably doesn't even know who he is, because there is just no big disconnect of anyone than John Stanton. Like, when he took over this ownership back in 2016, I really thought there was going to be hope. I thought that he couldn't have been any worse than Nintendo of America, couldn't be any worse than Howard Lincoln, couldn't be any worse than John Ellis, who was also the CEO, couldn't be any worse than Chuck Armstrong. Now, fortunately, Chuck Armstrong, former Mariners president, he's gone, but Howard Lincoln and John Ellis still remain as the board members, so they are very much involved with this team. So at this point, even if John Stanton wanted to do anything about it, he still has to go through his board to do anything about it. And oh boy. And just to think that, imagine if the Mariners still had Kevin Mather on this team. Ugh. Glad we don't have that owner or that president anymore. But it's very concerning, because I was concerned where I did get a little bit off topic, but I was very concerned when the Mariners just traded for Teoscar Hernandez, made a cheap trade, or actually overpaid for Colton Wong in that trade. Trevor got on the cheap, and the only real pitcher you really got was Justin Topa. Now, he was a great pickup, but I don't think he's a big-time pitcher that you can trust in the bullpen. Like, I remember I was crying throughout the offseason, like, we got to get a closer. We got to get a closer. We got to get anyone in the bullpen, or maybe add some outfield depth, because at least at that time, we didn't know if Jared Kelenic was actually going to do something like that. Like he did at least in April and May, and then he just fell apart. But now in the offseason, like, you don't expect to see Teoscar coming back. So that's where the hole is going to be in the outfield, unless we can bank on Dominic Canzone actually being a big part of the team. But he wasn't really part of the team that much in the later parts of September, which was really concerning and just puzzling. But Mariners got to do something in the offseason. Like, now I'm starting to think that maybe the Mariners should have taken the risk and signed for Cody Bellinger on the cheap. I mean, that at least would have been a John Stanton thing to do, was to go out and get someone like a Cody Bellinger. But now that the Mariners didn't take the risk for him, now he's probably going to get a big contract, because he actually had a good season, because he, I guess, achieved really well for the Cubs. But I don't know if the Mariners will go for him either. So this offseason is going to be, I think it's going to be ugly. And my prediction is, I expect Cal Raleigh to be traded away, because John Stanton does seem like a guy that would get his feelings hurt. And I think he is going to get his feelings hurt. And I actually do believe the Mariners are going to try to trade Cal Raleigh, which I hope they don't, because if they do, then I hope everyone on the team demands a trade just to humiliate John Stanton, but not like he'll care, because Mariners do really well with the revenue. Mariners at least made good money this season, because when you at least have a team that is on the way to make the playoffs, well, at least until then, I mean, all it matters is anything that says on the annual report where the team made a profit. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes for a baseball team, if you really love your product, sometimes you got to spend the money. And here's the thing. It's not like I'm asking the Mariners to like go out and put 10-year contracts on like Scott Boris's clients, like last year for like Bogarts and like Carlos Correa. Not asking for anything like that, but at least anyone in the mids that's at least decent, veteran leadership, anything like that, especially in the bullpen. Just need anyone that has some kind of experience to make anything happen. And here's the thing. Mariners actually do have time. Like Logan Gilbert still doesn't have a new contract. Cal Raleigh still doesn't have a new contract. George Kirby doesn't have a new contract. So there is time to at least spend some money, at least until their contracts are up. I don't like what they're doing in reverse, because I remember Jerry Dipoto did say something like, oh yeah, we don't really want to spend the money because we don't want to have nothing left until when the other guys are up for re-upping. But the problem I have with that statement is they had club control for years, so it's not like you are much in a hurry to give them a contract. So why don't you, Mariners, why don't you guys actually do spend the money, actually get some mid-level players? Because I would think that if you just missed the playoffs, and you did miss the playoffs in quite humiliating fashion, maybe it is time to open that checkbook. Go get the Shohei Ohtanis. I don't care. Take the risk. He's a big name guy. He'll at least hit for you, as long as that arm doesn't really affect him, because boy, did he get just burned out from the Angels. But I really do hope the Mariners at least do something in the offseason. Give the Mariners some kind of hope. Give the fans some hope that we all deserve, because we just saw the Mariners make it to the playoffs the last season. And then we get awarded again by missing the playoffs. Like, my concern is, what if this is just the season where, what if last season was just like that excuse of like, okay, let's just stand pat for the next 21 years. Would rather not see that, because only got to see the playoffs at that time before I was even 10. And then only got to see the playoffs for like a very short amount of time for 2022. I want more than that. us fans should want more than that. But unfortunately, we got fans out there that are just willing to say, okay, I believe in you, but you need to have a management to actually develop a team, actually get some help, provide leadership, because we did lose a lot of that when Carlos Santana wasn't re-signed, or at least Adam Frazier. And then Adam Frazier turned into Colton Wong, and it's scary to think that we were better off having Adam Frazier. And then another thing I want to mention is a friend of mine sent me this. Former Mariners that decided not to sign back or traded or were DFA. Adam Frazier clinched the playoffs with the Orioles. Carlos Santana didn't sign, clinched the playoffs with the Brewers. Colton Wong goes to the playoffs with the Dodgers. Now, that doesn't really mean much of a factor, but it still happened. Eric Swanson traded, clinched the playoffs with the Blue Jays. Paul Sewald traded, clinched the playoffs with the Diamondbacks. So I would hope that if the Mariners are going to do anything in the offseason, go spend that money. Because here's my thing. If you had money back then to let Bill Bavasi spend however much he wanted, put the Mariners in $100 million payroll along with a 100-loss season, you are more than capable of spending that money for a winning product. If you are willing to spend money on a losing product, then go spend money on a winning product. That's just the hypocrisy I see from this team, from this organization. But anyways, those are my thoughts. I just can't believe that Cal Raleigh gave me another reason to stay up this late to talk about this new thing. And hopefully this doesn't turn into a disaster between Cal Raleigh and management. Hopefully this turns into something where they do listen to Cal Raleigh. Now, do I expect them to listen to Cal Raleigh? Absolutely not. But we'll see. I just hope that Cal Raleigh just doesn't get traded away because John Stanton got his feelings hurt. So those are my thoughts. Thank you very much for watching this video. Hit that subscribe button. And John Stanton, go spend that money.